Commander Vortex stood at the observation window and watched the human ship approach the station. His forearms were folded behind his back, and his thick exoskeleton gleamed under the artificial lights. He had lived for over 300 years. He had fought in 37 planetary campaigns. He had killed enemies from dozens of species, and he had never once felt fear in battle. The Kireshi Empire considered him a legend. Young warriors spoke his name with respect. Generals asked for his advice. He had earned every scar on his body through combat, and those scars told stories of victory after victory. Today, he was here to judge whether humans deserved to join the Galactic Coalition. He already knew his answer. He had read the reports. Humans were small. They were soft. They lived for less than 100 years, which was barely enough time to learn how to fight properly. Their planet was unremarkable. Their technology was basic compared to most coalition species, and they had only discovered faster-than-light travel 20 years ago. Vortex did not understand why the coalition was even considering them, but the rules were clear. Any species that requested membership had the right to present their case, so here he was, wasting his time on creatures that would probably run at the first sign of real danger. The human ship docked with a soft clang that echoed through the station. Vortex turned away from the window and walked toward the greeting area. His heavy footsteps made the floor vibrate. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, and his body was covered in natural armor that could stop most projectile weapons. Next to him, humans would look like children. The airlock opened, and the human delegation stepped through. There were 5 of them. They wore simple uniforms in dark blue, with small symbols on their chests that Vortex assumed were military ranks. They carried no visible weapons, which he found either foolish or arrogant. In Kireshi culture, a warrior always carried a blade. The leader of the group stepped forward. She was a woman with brown hair that she kept tied back from her face. Her skin was a light tan color, and there were small lines around her eyes that suggested age, though Vortex could never tell with humans. She was short. The top of her head barely reached his chest. "Commander Vortex," she said. Her voice was calm and steady. "I am Captain Katie Morgan, of the Earth Defense Fleet. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." She extended her hand toward him. Vortex knew this was a human greeting. He reached out with one of his smaller arms and touched her palm briefly. Her hand was warm and soft, with no armor or claws. He could have crushed it without effort. "Captain Morgan," he said. His voice was deep and rough, filtered through the translator device attached to his throat. "The Coalition has rules. All species that wish to join must prove their combat capability. This is why I am here." Katie nodded. She did not seem intimidated by his size or his tone. Vortex found this slightly interesting. Most small species showed fear when they first met a Kireshi warrior. "We understand," Katie said. "We are prepared to share our military records with you and the other coalition representatives." Vortex made a sound that was something like a grunt. "Your application mentions an engagement with the Vorn Collective. This is what interests the coalition. The Vorn are dangerous enemies. Many species have fallen to them." Something changed in Katie's expression when he mentioned the Vorn. It was small. Just a slight tightening around her eyes. But Vortex noticed it. He had spent centuries reading the body language of different species. This human was hiding something. Not a lie, exactly. More like a memory she did not want to visit. "Yes," she said after a short pause. "The Battle of New Montana. We can provide full records of that engagement." "Good. The briefing will begin in 1 hour. My colleagues from other coalition species will be present. Do not waste our time with politics or speeches. We want facts." Katie's expression did not change. "You will have them, Commander." Vortex turned and walked away without another word. He did not believe in pleasantries. War was simple and honest. Words were complicated and often meaningless. As he walked through the station corridors, he thought about what he knew of the Vorn. They were a hive-minded species that attacked in massive swarms. They did not negotiate. They did not retreat. They simply kept coming until their enemies were dead or enslaved. The Kireshi Empire had fought them many times, and those battles had always been costly. The idea that humans had survived a Vorn attack was surprising, but Vortex assumed they had probably fled or hidden until rescue arrived. That was what most weak species did. There was no shame in it. But it was not the behavior of true warriors. He entered the briefing room and found the other coalition representatives already waiting. There was Ambassador Selith of the Meldrani, a aquatic species that communicated through color changes in their skin. There was Delegate Kor of the Gorath, a being made of living crystal whose body hummed with internal energy. There were representatives from 3 other species, all of them veterans of war. All of them here to judge whether humans were worthy. Commander, Selith said, her skin shifting to a polite blue. What is your impression of the humans? Vortex settled into a seat that had been built to support his massive frame. They are small. Their leader seems confident. But confidence means nothing without strength to support it. The Vorn engagement is interesting, Kor said. His voice sounded like stones grinding together. If the reports are accurate, humans held a colony against a full Vorn assault force for over 20 days. Vortek clicked his mandibles in disbelief. That is impossible. No species could hold against the Vorn for that long without massive military support. The humans must have exaggerated their reports. Perhaps, Selith said. That is why we are here. To learn the truth. The door opened, and the human delegation entered. Katie Morgan walked at the front, followed by a young man with dark hair and a scar along his jaw. He carried a small device that Vortek recognized as a data projector. Katie looked around the room at the assembled aliens. If she felt nervous surrounded by beings that could tear her apart with their bare hands, she did not show it. Representatives of the coalition, she said. This is Lieutenant Danny Reyes. He will present the battle records you requested. She paused, and met Vortek's eyes directly. I should warn you, what you are about to see is difficult, not because it is violent. You are all warriors. You have seen violence. It is difficult because it shows what ordinary people are capable of when they have no other choice. Vortek leaned back in his seat and prepared to be unimpressed. He had seen everything war had to offer. Nothing these small, soft creatures could show him would change his opinion. He was wrong. Lieutenant Danny Reyes activated the holographic projector, and the center of the room filled with light. An image appeared above the table, showing a planet covered in green forests and blue oceans. It looked peaceful. Beautiful. Even. This is New Montana, Danny said. His voice was quiet but clear. 6 months ago, it was home to 42,000 human colonists. Farmers, engineers, teachers, families. The colony had been established for 12 years. It was one of our most successful settlements. Vortex studied the image without much interest. He had seen thousands of planets. This one was unremarkable. The military garrison on New Montana consisted of 312 soldiers, Danny continued. Standard colonial defense force. Light weapons. Basic fortifications. The colony was located far from any known conflict zones. We did not expect trouble. The image changed. Now it showed a dark sky filled with shapes. Hundreds of shapes. Thousands. They blocked out the stars like a living cloud. On the morning of March 15th, the Vorn collective arrived. Vortex sat forward slightly. He recognized those shapes. Vorn landing pods. Each one carried between 20 and 50 Vorn soldiers. He tried to count the pods in the image and stopped when he reached 200. There were many more than that. Our early warning systems detected the Vorn fleet approximately 4 hours before they reached orbit, Danny said. We sent an emergency distress signal to the nearest coalition outpost. They responded immediately and promised to send a relief fleet. He paused. The fleet was 19 days away. A murmur passed through the room. Ambassador Selith's skin turned a dark purple color that Vortek knew meant distress. Delegate Kor's crystal body flickered with agitated light. 19 days, against the Vorn, with only 300 soldiers. Vortek had fought the Vorn before. He knew how they operated. They did not stop. They did not rest. They attacked in waves, wearing down their enemies through sheer numbers. Even the mighty Koreshi Empire had lost entire armies to Vorn swarms. The idea of 300 humans holding them for 19 days was absurd. The Vorn landed approximately 18,000 ground troops, Danny said. The hologram showed the landing pods crashing into the forests around the colony. They began their assault within 6 hours of landing. 18,000, Vortex said. The number felt impossible. Against 300. Yes. Commander. Your people surrendered, of course. The Vorn accept surrender. They would have taken your colonists as slaves. But they would have lived. Danny looked at him. There was something in the young human's eyes that Vortek could not identify. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was something deeper. No, Commander. We did not surrender. Then you fled. You evacuated the civilians and retreated. We had 7 transport ships. Each one could carry approximately 500 people. The Vorn destroyed 5 of them before they could launch. The other 2 escaped with about 900 colonists, mostly children and elderly. Danny's voice remained steady. But Vortek noticed his hands were tight at his sides. 41,000 people remained on the surface with no way to escape. The hologram changed again. Now it showed the colony itself. A collection of simple buildings, surrounded by defensive walls. Small figures moved along the walls. Human soldiers taking positions. Colonel Patricia Hayes took command of the defense, Danny said. She gathered all military personnel and organized them into defensive teams. Then she did something that surprised everyone. What? Seleth asked. She opened the armory to civilians. Anyone who wanted to fight was given a weapon and basic training. Over 2,000 colonists volunteered within the first hour. Farmers, shopkeepers, teachers, parents. They knew the odds. They knew the Vorn were coming. They picked up weapons anyway. Vortek felt something strange in his chest. It was a small feeling, easy to ignore, but it was there. He did not have a word for it yet. The first Vorn wave hit our outer defenses at sunset on the first day, Danny said. The hologram showed the battle. Small human figures firing weapons at a rushing tide of Vorn bodies. The Vorn were fast and savage, their claws tearing through anything they touched. We lost 47 defenders in the first hour. The Vorn lost over 600. 600? Delegate Corps' voice hummed with surprise. How? Humans are physically weak compared to most species, Danny admitted. But we are very good at building weapons. We had prepared kill zones, overlapping fields of fire, explosive traps. Every meter of ground the Vorn took cost them dearly. The hologram showed a human soldier standing on the wall as Vorn climbed toward him. He was firing his weapon until the last moment. Then he pulled something from his belt and held it up. A grenade. The explosion killed him and the dozen Vorn around him. Private Marcus Cole, Danny said quietly. He was 22 years old. He had been on New Montana for 3 months. When the Vorn breached his section of the wall, he made a choice. Vortek watched the hologram reset and show another scene. Another battle. Another desperate stand. The first day ended with our forces still holding the main colony. We had lost 89 soldiers and 112 civilian volunteers. The Vorn had lost approximately 1,000 troops. Danny looked around the room at the alien faces. They did not stop. They attacked through the night. The Vorn do not sleep, Vortek said. They rotate their forces constantly. They grind their enemies down through exhaustion. Yes, Danny said. We learned that quickly. Colonel Hayes organized rotating rest schedules. Defenders would fight for 6 hours, then rest for 2, then fight again. It was not enough sleep. It was never enough. But it kept people functional. The hologram showed the sun rising over the colony. Smoke drifted from burning buildings. Bodies lay everywhere, human and Vorn alike, and on the walls, exhausted humans still stood with weapons in their hands. Day 2, Danny said. 18 days to go. Vortek realized he had stopped breathing. He forced himself to take air into his lungs. He was a warrior who had seen countless battles, and he was holding his breath watching a recording of small, soft creatures fighting for their lives. The feeling in his chest grew stronger. He still did not have a word for it. Show us more, Seleth said. Her skin had shifted to a color Vortek had never seen before. It seemed to be a mixture of horror and fascination. Danny nodded. Very well. But I must warn you. It gets worse before it gets better. He touched the projector, and the hologram changed to show the 3rd day of the siege. The walls were damaged now, patched with broken vehicles and pieces of buildings. The defenders looked exhausted, their faces covered in dirt and blood. But they were still fighting. They were still standing. And somewhere deep inside his ancient warrior's heart, Vortek began to understand that he had made a terrible mistake in his judgment of humanity. The hologram showed a man lying on a medical table. His body was covered in burns. The skin on his chest and arms was blackened and peeling. Any normal creature would have been screaming in pain. Any normal creature would have been unconscious or dead. Sergeant Chris Dunham was sitting up and arguing with the medics. "This is day 5 of the siege," Danny said. Sergeant Dunham had been hit by Vorn plasma fire during a counterattack. The burns covered approximately 40% of his body. Our medical systems classified his injuries as critical. He was not expected to survive. The recording played. Vortek watched as the burned man pushed away the medics who were trying to treat him. His voice came through the hologram's speakers, rough with pain but filled with determination. "There are people still fighting out there," Dunham said in the recording. "Give me a rifle. Patch me up enough to walk. I am not dying in a hospital bed while my friends are on the walls." His nervous system should have shut down from the pain, Danny said. "Human bodies have limits. When damage becomes too severe, our brains are supposed to protect us by making us unconscious. But sometimes, in extreme situations, something else happens." "What?" Seleth asked. Her skin was pale now, shifting between colors like she could not settle on a single emotion. "Adrenaline," Danny said. "Cortisol. Endorphins. When humans believe that our survival depends on continued action, our bodies release chemicals that suppress pain and increase strength. Our hearts beat faster. Our muscles receive more blood. Our minds become focused on a single goal. Keep fighting." The hologram showed Sergeant Dunham walking out of the medical tent with a rifle in his hands. His burns were covered with emergency bandages. He moved slowly, carefully, but he moved. "He fought for 3 more days," Danny said. 3 days with burns that should have killed him. He led his squad in 4 defensive actions. He saved 11 lives. On day 8, he finally collapsed during a Vorn assault. He died with his weapon in his hands, firing until his last breath. Vortek's claws were digging into the arms of his chair. He did not realize he was doing it until he heard the material cracking. He forced himself to relax, but his mind was racing. The Kireshi were famous for their ability to fight through pain. It was part of their warrior culture. They trained for it. They took pride in it. But this human, this small, soft creature, had done something that even the greatest Kireshi warriors would have struggled to match. "This is not unusual," Danny said, as if reading Vortek's thoughts. Sergeant Dunham was brave, but he was not unique. Throughout the siege, we documented hundreds of cases of humans continuing to fight with injuries that should have disabled them. The hologram changed to show a woman running across an open field. She was carrying another person on her back. Explosions burst around her. She was bleeding from wounds in her stomach, and her face was twisted with effort, but she kept running. "Corporal Megan Ortiz," Danny said, day 7. During a Vorn breakthrough, 12 wounded soldiers were trapped in a collapsed building. Corporal Ortiz made 6 trips across 2 kilometers of open ground to carry them to safety. She was hit by shrapnel on her second trip. She continued anyway. She refused medical treatment until all 12 soldiers were evacuated. "How did she survive?" Delegate Kaur asked. His crystal body was pulsing rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "She almost did not. She lost consciousness immediately after delivering the last wounded soldier. Our medics had to operate on her for 6 hours to repair the internal damage. She was back on the walls 3 days later." Vortek made a sound deep in his throat. It was not a word. It was something more primitive than language. A sound of pure disbelief. "I must show you something else," Danny said. "This is not easy to watch, but it is important for you to understand what we are." The hologram changed again. This time it showed a woman who was clearly not a soldier. She was older, perhaps 50 years by human counting, and she wore simple civilian clothes stained with dirt and blood. She was standing in what looked like a school building, surrounded by children. "Laura Briggs," Danny said. Before the invasion, she was a teacher at the colony school. She had never held a weapon in her life. She had never been in a fight. The recording showed Laura organizing the children into groups. She spoke to them calmly, quietly, even though the sounds of battle were clearly audible in the background. She gave them tasks to do: sorting supplies, preparing water, keeping each other calm. She turned chaos into order with nothing but her voice and her presence. When the Vorn breached the Eastern District on day 9, Laura's shelter was directly in their path. She had 137 children under her care. The nearest military support was 15 minutes away. The hologram showed the Vorn breaking through a wall. Laura stood between them and the room full of children. She held a weapon that she had clearly never used before. Her hands were shaking. Her face was white with terror. She fired anyway. She held that doorway for 11 minutes, Danny said. She killed 14 Vorn soldiers. When reinforcements arrived, they found her still standing in that doorway, with an empty weapon and a broken chair leg in her hands. She had beaten a Vorn to death with furniture after her ammunition ran out. The room was completely silent. Even Vortek, who had seen so much death and violence, could not speak. Laura Briggs was not a warrior, Danny said. She was a school teacher. She was afraid. She was untrained. She was everything that should have made her useless in combat, but when children were in danger, she became something else. She became what humans become when we have no other choice. What is that? Seleth whispered. Danny looked at her with those strange, deep human eyes. Dangerous, he said simply. We become very, very dangerous. Vortek understood now. He understood why his chest felt tight, why his ancient warrior instincts were screaming at him. This was not the fear of facing a powerful enemy. This was something deeper. This was the recognition of a species that did not follow the normal rules of war. Strength could be measured. Speed could be calculated. Weapons could be compared, but what the humans had, this ability to transform ordinary people into killers through nothing but desperation and love, that could not be measured. It could only be feared. Continue, Vortek said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Show us the rest. Danny nodded. As you wish, Commander. We are only on day 9. There are still 14 more days to cover. 14 more days, Vortek thought. 14 more days of this impossible survival. What else had these humans done? What else had they endured? He was not sure he wanted to know. He was certain he needed to know. The hologram showed day 12. The colony looked different now. Half the buildings were destroyed or burning. The defensive walls had collapsed in several places, replaced by barriers made of broken vehicles, fallen trees, and pieces of ruined structures. The defenders looked like ghosts. Their faces were hollow. Their eyes were sunken and dark, but they were still there. They were still fighting. By day 12, Danny said, we had lost 164 soldiers and 307 civilian volunteers. The Vorn had lost approximately 6,000 troops, but they kept coming. They always kept coming. Vortek watched the hologram show wave after wave of Vorn throwing themselves at the human defenses. The creatures were relentless, their bodies piling up in front of the barriers while more climbed over them. And on the other side, exhausted humans fired their weapons until the barrels overheated. Sleep deprivation was becoming critical, Danny said. Humans need approximately 8 hours of sleep per night to function properly. Our defenders were getting 2 hours, sometimes less. After 12 days, their bodies were breaking down. Their minds were struggling to think clearly. They were making mistakes. Why did they not collapse? Kor asked. Other species would have collapsed long before this point. Some did collapse, Danny admitted. We had people who simply fell down and could not get up again. Their bodies had given everything they had. But others found something more, something inside them that kept pushing when logic said they should stop. The hologram showed a medic working on a wounded soldier. The medic's hands were shaking badly, and his movements were slow and clumsy. Text appeared beside the image. Ryan Castillo. Medical specialist. 61 hours without sleep. Specialist Castillo performed emergency surgery on 7 patients during a single night while experiencing severe sleep deprivation, Danny said. His hands were trembling. His vision was blurring. He made 2 mistakes during the procedures, but all 7 patients survived. When asked later how he managed it, he said he simply could not allow himself to fail. Those people needed him. So he kept working. That is not possible, Seleth said. Her skin was flickering between colors so fast that Vortek could not read her emotions. 61 hours without sleep should cause hallucinations, loss of motor control, cognitive failure. It does, Danny said. Castillo reported seeing things that were not there. He heard voices. He had moments where he forgot where he was or what he was doing, but whenever a patient needed him, he came back. He focused. He did his job. Then he collapsed and slept for 14 hours straight. The hologram changed to show day 17. The situation was clearly desperate now. The colony had shrunk to a small central area. Bodies were everywhere. And the defenders were no longer firing their weapons. Day 17, Danny said. We ran out of ammunition. The room went silent. Vortek felt something cold spread through his body. Running out of ammunition against the Vorn was a death sentence. There was no negotiation. No retreat. No second chances. Just death. What did you do? Vortek asked. His voice was barely a whisper. We adapted. The hologram showed humans working frantically in what had been a factory. They were building things. Crude explosive devices made from fertilizer and fuel. Spears made from metal pipes. Traps made from wire and broken glass. Colonel Hayes ordered every engineer, every mechanic, every person with technical skills to create weapons from whatever materials we had. We built bombs that could be thrown by hand. We sharpened pieces of metal into blades. We turned farming equipment into weapons. Danny's voice was steady, but Vortek could see the tension in his shoulders. The Vorn expected us to die when our bullets ran out. They were wrong. The hologram showed a group of humans hiding in a ruined building. Vorn soldiers entered, expecting easy prey. The humans attacked with pipes and knives. It was brutal. It was savage. It was nothing like the clean, disciplined warfare that Vortek knew. It was survival. We lost many people in those days, Danny said. Fighting the Vorn without proper weapons was almost suicide. But every Vorn we killed was one less Vorn attacking the shelters where our children were hiding. Every hour we bought was 1 hour closer to rescue. Your people knew they were going to die, Kor said. It was not a question. Many of them knew. Yes, they fought anyway. The hologram changed to show a young man. He looked barely old enough to be called an adult. His face was dirty and scared, but there was determination in his eyes. Text appeared beside him. Private Austin Grant. Age 19. Day 20. Danny said. His voice became quieter. The Vorn had gathered a large force in an old warehouse on the edge of the colony. We knew they were preparing for a major assault. If that force hit our lines, we would not survive. Katie Morgan spoke for the first time since the briefing began. Her voice was soft but clear. Private Grant volunteered. The hologram showed Austin walking through the ruined streets. He was carrying a pack on his back. He moved carefully, avoiding Vorn patrols, using shadows and debris for cover. He was alone. He carried enough explosives to destroy the warehouse, Danny said. But there was no way to deliver them from a safe distance. The only option was to carry them inside. Personally. Vortek understood. He felt his body growing still, entering the state his people called battle lock. His mind was struggling to process what he was seeing. The hologram showed Austin reaching the warehouse. He paused at the entrance and touched a device on his chest. His voice came through the speakers, recorded from his communication device. This is Private Grant. I'm in position. I can see them in there, hundreds of them. Tell my mom I wasn't scared. Grant out. He was scared, Katie said quietly. His biosensors recorded a heart rate of 160 beats per minute. His stress hormones were at maximum levels. He was terrified. But he went anyway, Vortek said. Yes, he went anyway. The hologram showed a flash of light. The warehouse exploded. When the dust cleared, there was nothing left but a smoking crater. Private Austin Grant killed 83 Vorn soldiers with that explosion, Danny said. He was 19 years old. He had been in the military for 11 months. He had never been in combat before New Montana. The room was completely silent. Vortek could not move. His body was locked in place. His mind overwhelmed by what he had witnessed. A 19-year-old child had walked into certain death because it might save others. Not probably. Not definitely. Just might. He had been afraid. And he had done it anyway. Vortek had lived for 300 years. He had seen warriors from 100 species. He had never seen anything like this. 3 more days, Danny said. On day 23, the relief fleet arrived. They found 119 soldiers still fighting, and 412 civilians who had picked up weapons and joined them. He turned off the hologram. The room fell into shadow. That is the story of New Montana, Danny said. That is what humans are capable of when we have no other choice. No one spoke. No one moved. The weight of what they had witnessed filled the room like something physical. And Vortek, the legendary warrior who had never felt fear in battle, found himself afraid of a species that barely reached his chest. The briefing ended, and the alien representatives began to leave. They moved slowly, speaking to each other in hushed voices. Seleth's skin had settled into a deep gray color that Vortek had never seen before. Kor's crystal body was dim, as if the energy inside him had been drained by what he had witnessed. Vortek did not move. He sat in his chair, his massive body completely still. His eyes stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. His mind was somewhere far away, processing everything he had seen. 300 soldiers, 23 days, 18,000 enemies. The numbers did not make sense. They could not make sense. He had fought the Vorn. He knew what they were capable of. An army of 300 Kireshi warriors, the greatest fighters in the galaxy, would have fallen within a week against those odds. Maybe less. But these humans had held. These small, soft, fragile creatures had held against a nightmare. The other representatives filed out of the room. Vortek heard them talking as they left. Remarkable, one of them said. Foolish, but remarkable. They should have surrendered, another said. They would have lost fewer people. They were protecting their young. All species protect their young. Vortek wanted to stand up and correct them. He wanted to explain that what he had witnessed was not simple foolishness or basic parental instinct. It was something else. Something that went beyond survival. Something that made his warrior's heart beat differently. But he could not find the words. He could not move. The room grew quiet. The other aliens were gone. Only the human delegation remained, standing near the door, watching him. Katie Morgan walked toward him. Her footsteps were soft on the metal floor. She stopped a few meters away, looking up at him with those strange human eyes. "Commander," she said. "Are you all right?" For a long moment, Vortek did not respond. Then, slowly, with great effort, he turned his head to look at her. "I have lived for 317 years, he said. His voice sounded different to his own ears. Weaker. Unsure. "I have fought in 37 planetary campaigns. I have killed enemies beyond counting. I have led armies. I have conquered worlds. I have seen species rise and fall." Katie waited. She did not interrupt. "In all that time," Vortek continued, "I have never seen anything that frightened me. Not truly. I have felt battle fear. The quick, sharp feeling that comes before combat. But real fear? Deep fear? Never." He paused. "Until now. We frighten you?" Katie asked. There was no pride in her voice. No mockery. Just honest curiosity. "Yes." Vortek stood up slowly. His massive body rose until he towered over her, his head nearly touching the ceiling. He looked down at this small human woman, and he felt the fear again. Cold. Ancient. Instinctual. "I have seen powerful species," he said. "I have seen species with weapons that could destroy stars. I have seen species with technology so advanced that they seemed like gods. None of them frightened me. Because power can be measured. Power can be understood. Power can be defeated." He moved closer to Katie. She did not step back. She did not show any sign of fear, even though he could kill her with a single blow. "What I saw today cannot be measured," he said. "Your sergeant with burns on his body. Fighting for 3 more days. Your corporal carrying wounded across enemy fire with metal in her stomach. Your teacher killing soldiers with a chair leg to protect children." His voice dropped lower. "Your boy, 19 years old. walking into death because it might help others. Austin Grant, Katie said softly. His name was Austin Grant. Yes. Austin Grant. A child. He was afraid. Your data showed he was afraid. But he did it anyway. Vortex mandibles clicked together in a gesture his species made when they were deeply disturbed. How do I fight against that? How do I calculate the strength of an enemy who does not stop when he should stop? Katie was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. We don't fight when we should stop, Commander. We fight because we can't stop. It's not a choice. It's not a strategy. It's what we are. That is what frightens me. Vortex turned away from her and walked to the observation window. Outside, stars glittered in the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, the Vorn were still hunting. The Coalition was still fighting its endless wars. And now, humanity had entered the stage. The Kureshi Empire is the greatest military power in the Coalition, he said. We are strong. We are disciplined. We have fought for thousands of years. But we fight because we are warriors. Because we are trained for it. Because it is our nature. He paused. Your people are not warriors. Your teacher was not a warrior. Your boy was not a warrior. But they fought like warriors anyway. Everyone can be a warrior when they need to be, Katie said. That's the human way. Vortex turned back to face her. Yes, I understand that now. And it terrifies me more than any weapon ever could. He walked toward the door, then stopped. He turned to look at the human delegation one final time. Danny Reyes stood beside Katie, his young face serious. The other humans watched him with calm eyes. The Kureshi Empire will support humanity's full membership in the Coalition, Vortex said. I will personally recommend that your species be classified as Tier 1 combat allies. The same classification as the Kureshi. Katie raised her eyebrows. That's the highest classification possible. Yes, it is. We've only been in space for 20 years. We're new to all of this. Vortex looked at her for a long moment. New does not mean weak, Captain Morgan. What I saw today proves that. Your species is different. You are not the strongest. You are not the fastest. You do not have the best weapons or the most advanced technology. But you have something else. Something that cannot be trained or built or conquered. What's that, Commander? Vortex searched for the right word. In his language, there was no exact translation for what he wanted to say. The closest term was a word that meant the opposite of surrender. But that was not quite right. Finally, he found a human word that he had learned long ago. Spite, he said. You have spite. The universe tells you to die. And you spit in its face and keep fighting. That is more dangerous than any weapon. He walked through the door, then paused one final time. Captain Morgan, that boy, Austin Grant, you said he was scared but he went anyway. Yes. In Kureshi culture, we believe that courage is the absence of fear. A warrior who feels fear is considered weak. He shook his head slowly. I think we have been wrong for a very long time. True courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what must be done despite the fear. He straightened his massive body. Thank you for teaching me this. He walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing through the station corridors. Behind him, Katie watched him go with a small smile on her face. The Coalition was about to gain a new member. And somewhere in the galaxy, enemies of humanity were about to learn a very important lesson. Some species fought because they were strong. Humans fought because they refused to stop. And that made all the difference.